I want to abolish earmarks, a very wasteful process that actually contributes to growing spending in other unrelated areas, because people get co-opted when they get these earmarks and they feel obligated to vote for other bills.
We're not going to have earmarks, so it's really silly for some senior Republicans in the Senate to try to block it.
As I think all of you know, you could eliminate every congressional earmark and you would save no money. It's really an argument about discretion.
Now, people look at that, the Senate Minority Leader talking about earmarks in this environment, and say, how can that be? How can he say that? Earmarks are placeholders. They are not actual spending. They're not appropriation. They're placeholders for local pet projects that lawmakers put in bills. The appropriations for these different agencies and departments have already been submitted. They're already there, the lump sum. These lawmakers then direct these specific pet projects where some of that money is going to go. That's the discretion part. Senator Jim Inhofe has put out a huge paper defending the earmark process, essentially saying this whole issue about banning earmarks is bogus. He says by banning it, in other words, Republicans are resolving not to appropriate or authorize spending, which is precisely what the Constitution directs members of Congress to do. He calls a moratorium on spending doesn't save any money. It merely sends it to the executive branch. In other words, President Obama and the administration then decide where exactly it's going to go. What about this issue of earmarks? We're back with the panel. Steve.
Well, I don't agree with them. If you would have told me a week ago, it's a fair explanation. We got into this a little bit last night. Technically, you can say earmarks as earmarks don't add to the bottom line of spending. What earmarks do, and the reason that so many of us find them so insidious, is they grease the wheel for bad spending. So you may have Senator X who doesn't care whether HUD gets a 20% budget increase in any given year, but he's got a project for $37 million in his district or in his state that's going to be the Senator X Center for Excellence, for Congressional Excellence, you know, praising himself. And he doesn't care about the overall spending, but he really wants this center funded. So he's going to vote for the bill that he otherwise might not have voted for. And I think that's where it becomes insidious. It adds to the corruption and the perception of corruption here in Washington. So yes, technically I think you can say that it doesn't add to the bottom line, but does it fuel greater spending and bad spending? I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, Mara, I want to be clear. I'm not defending your earmarks. I'm explaining what McConnell and others are saying.
Yes, they're saying, should a bureaucrat get to spend this money, or should we get to tell them to spend it on the bridge to nowhere, which was a famous one. But here's what I think is important about earmarks. As a political fight, they are extremely important. As a fiscal amount, they're tiny and insignificant, but they're a very important symbol, and they also happen to be the very first test of the kind of dement Tea Party Senate caucus, whatever we're calling them, versus the establishment. Because Mitch McConnell, for some reason, has decided to be on the other side of this, even though it certainly seems, when you read the list of sponsors that DeMint has lined up, I mean, you have to kind of chuckle. It's like every single freshman, practically, plus a lot of other Cornyn, Coburn, you know, everybody who wants to make peace with Jim DeMint and the new freshman is signing on to that bill. The president is for this. John Boehner is for this. This just seems to be something that is coming down the pike and is going to be hard to stop.
Tim, Rand Paul is obviously an incoming member, will be sworn in January, member of the Tea Party, and he was talked to the Wall Street Journal, and here's what they wrote about it. In a bigger shift from his campaign pledge to end earmarks, Paul tells me that they are a bad symbol of easy spending, but he will fight for Kentucky's share of earmarks and federal pork as long as it's doled out transparently at the committee level and not parachuted into the dead of night. I will advocate for Kentucky's interests, he says, according to the Wall Street Journal. Is that dispiriting for Tea Party folks?
I think it certainly is dispiriting, and I hope that that Rand Paul doesn't go around doing too much earmarking. And I think that Steve hit on the problems. It is, as we Catholics would say, an occasion of sin. It puts you in a situation where you're beholden to, as a senator, you're beholden then to Mitch McConnell or to other leaders or to the appropriators to make sure that you're bringing home the bacon.
But if it's in the light of day, if it's at the committee level, doesn't that essentially mean that's where you're steering the money and everybody sees it?
There's the Citizens Against Government Waste has a definition of earmark which might be different from other people's. They say, look, if it's authorized by an which is outside of appropriations, by an authorizing committee, it's not an earmark. If it's debated and included in a committee, it's not an earmark. Or if it's debated on the floor and voted on up or down, it's not, well, they'll say it's not pork barrel. So you can draw that line. But every time you start drawing these fine lines, you're taking a lot of the air out of the Tea Party spirit. I look at it this way. There's two wings in the Republican Party. There's a K Street wing with the lobbyists, you know, Bob Dole, Trent Lott, and their friends who are still on Capitol Hill. And there's a Tea Party wing. And who's going to win over the heart of the Senate conference? And that's the question going forward, and that's where DeMint's coming down, I think.
Look, the bureaucrat argument, you know, the argument is, well, you're going to let Obama administration bureaucrats make the decisions about where this money goes instead of members of Congress who are closer to the people. I get that argument, but really, do senior Republicans want to be, in this political environment or any political environment, defending the practice of earmarks because, you know, Congress has done such a great job?
No, but they do say we're going to cut spending overall, so the big pots of money go down.
Well, this goes to the point that Mara was making. So they'll say, you know, really this is a distraction. Earmarks don't amount to much. It's just a side issue. Look, if they had bills on the floor right now to reform Medicare or to change the way we structure Social Security, I would say, you know what, that's a good point. Go for that. Do the big stuff first. But they don't. That's not serious.
That is it for the panel, and probably not it for this topic, but stay tuned for the dangers of a late lunch.